What's going on, card people? I process tens of thousands of trading cards every month, and that takes a lot of organizing chaos. So I wanted to go over a few things that I do today to help me turn the bulk chaos into nice, organized, listed inventory that I can then easily ship off to my customers. And more to the point, I wanted to talk about a couple of the ways that CardBot fits into my process for doing that. Now, this isn't a gadget demo. This is not a whole video where I'm talking about every feature that CardBot has or anything like that. This is me talking about my workflow and my process for taking a giant pile of bulk and turning it into listed inventory. So the folks over at Card Castle did agree to sponsor this video, but they can't really determine my workflow. They can't tell me what I'm doing or how I'm doing everything, so they can't really figure for me how the CardBot works into my processes. So that's what I wanted to show today. So you may be familiar with this image I'm putting on the screen. This is the big flowchart that I have for my workflow process, decision engine, however you want to think about that I showed at the Gamma conference that I went to earlier this year. And of course, this is a living document that changes all the time. Things change and go up and down, but generally speaking, it works about the same way. When a new lot arrives, the first step is pretty hands-on. We've got to do condition checks and then category sorts to make sure that all the magic is together, all the Pokemon's together, sports cards is together, things like that. We sort foils from non-foils, rarities, things of that, and also condition checking. So anything that's just obviously completely jacked up gets pulled out and set aside. We're not going to bother trying to process that through our whole bulk system. Everything then gets boxed up for later processing, and only then does it move on to the next, to my staging area. Okay, so my staging area is getting more sophisticated, more structured. So down here, I have things that has gone through that first process and needs to be moved into the next step. And then up here, I have things that are in the process of being sorted through. So there'll be some here that are separated sets, some here that are groups of separated sets, which I'll go into a little more detail in the future. This way, it's all structured and set aside. There aren't giant stacks of cards sitting on the desk waiting for things to be done to them. Okay, so the first use case that I have for the CardBot is for value sifting. Before I've done any sorting other than the very basic sorting that I've already mentioned, I'll run the cards through the CardBot to pull out anything that's worth more than $1, which is my current threshold for value sifting. Anything over $1 gets pulled out and set aside to potentially sell through Whatnot or eBay and things like that, where it's more of a premium listing, more of a premium shopping service for the customers who are looking for those kinds of things. And then everything else is staged for sorting for TCGplayer. This way, lower value cards don't end up on eBay, and then higher value, faster selling cards end up in front of the eyeballs of those premium customers. Here would be an entire stack of cards, a whole box full of cards that the CardBot has determined are worth at least $1 or more. Now, a couple of these might be off. That might have picked up as unlimited instead of revised. It happens every now and then. We got a nice unlimited Banalish Hero, some antiquities, Dark Ritual from 4th edition, the Bowl Island from Zendikar, Rancor, all the snow-covered lands from Ice Age. Now, these aren't in perfect condition, but they are at least high enough demand that I wouldn't feel bad about sticking them on my eBay store or trying to sell them through Whatnot. Grand Dynamo is cool. That art from Mental Note was always creepy to me. Stained Glass Island. All kinds of stuff. Lightning Bolt. Newer stuff like Final Fantasy foils. Leviathan from the Dark and Near Mint, looking good. A lot of these are cards that I have sold through those platforms, so it's just more copies of them that I can relist as they sell out. Unglued Island, that's a super cool one right there. And these are just the Magic. I have another box just like this for Pokemon. The next use case would be for set identification, which is done in a couple of different ways. I'll often use the CardBot to group by set or groups of sets. Sometimes I'll look through a stack of cards I'm putting in, and I'll notice that a whole lot of it is Lord of the Rings or Dominaria or something like that, and I'll have the CardBot pull only from a single set because I know it's a good chunk of the cards going in there. But if it's true, unsorted, mixed up everything, then I'll pull, have it pull cards all beginning with a single initial. So, say we're in Magic and we want to pull all the cards that begin, that are from sets that begin with letter K. So it'll pull everything from Kaldheim, Khans of Tarkir, Kaladesh. I'm sure there's other ones that aren't leaping to mind. But that way it's not running through a sort of 1,000 cards and pulling out 50 cards every time, because that's just way too much of a time-consuming step. We want it to pull a significant number of the cards that we put in out so that they are separated into a new sort. And then once we have everything, in a group of 5, all the sets beginning with, say, letter K, then we can just sort those out individually by hand real quick. Say it's 300 or 400 cards, I can just use the sorting tray and knock that out pretty quick, and then they're separated by set. Once I have a clean stack of all cards from the same set, I'll either run them through TCGplayer's Scan and Identify, which I've talked about in another video, or I'll run them back through the CardBot if it's a large number of them, so I can set them in there and let it do it passively while I'm working on something else. And that, either way, it's going to generate a CSV that I can then use to populate into my inventory system and add back into TCGplayer. So the real time savings comes from if it's 800 cards all from Lord of the Rings, it can digitize them. It gets 99% of them right. It sets aside the ones that it's not sure about so they don't accidentally end up as wrong listings in my store. And then I can generate a CSV directly from my from the interface on Card Castle, take the information from it, put it in my inventory system, and then upload it straight to TCGplayer. This way, for me, all the work is front-loaded, and I can control that work. And that way, when I get an order, it doesn't take me a long time to track down the card that's sold. So I'll get a list of all the cards that I have sold the previous day from TCGplayer, and I can pull all those cards out in just a few minutes. Whether that's 10 cards, 50 cards, or 500 cards, it doesn't really take that long once they're organized correctly. That way the discipline pays off for me on the back end, and it creates as little friction as possible between me shipping an order that I received. So those are the main ways I'm using the CardBot in my overall process, especially for Magic and Pokemon. I use it for the value sifting to get those premium cards pulled out. Like I said, for other games or for sports cards, I'm using either TCGplayer's scanning app or the Collex app. But this works so much faster, it's a lot less hands-on for Magic and Pokemon. And then also for set identification, whether I'm just pulling all cards from one set or grouping cards or grouping sets together based on their first initial, just to get a good even pass through the cards. And then the digitizing of them so that I can create a CSV that gets added into TCGplayer later. The CardBot isn't doing the work for me, but it definitely speeds up the work that I can do by having some of the work taken off of my hands for price checking, for digitizing, things like that. If you're processing TCG cards on any type of scale like I am, then it's worth giving CardBot a look. I know there are other bots out there. I personally prefer CardBot just because of the price point and what you get for it out of that price point. If you want to check them out, the link will be in the description of this video. And if you've got a system of your own that you like, or tips or questions or anything like that about my system, feel free to leave a comment. I try to answer as many comments as I can, as quickly as I can. Or you can also check out this video right up here that I'm sure is going to be something else that's interesting for you.